Oh no, that
All right.
half hour was so short. Just time went away from me.
All right, thanks everyone for attending. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:06. This is the Tuesday, August 24th, 2021 meeting of the Commission on Police Practices. I'm just going to read a quick purpose of the Commission on Police Practices for anyone who's not aware. The purpose of the Commission on Police Practices is to provide an independent investigation of officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths and an unbiased evaluation of all complaints against San Diego Police Department and its personnel in a process that will be transparent and accountable to the community. The Commission will also evaluate and review Sdpd policies, practices, training, and protocols, and represent the community in making recommendations for changes. The mission of the Commission is to hold law enforcement accountable to the community and to increase community trust in law enforcement, resulting in increased safety for both the community and law enforcement. And with that, I will kick it over to Charmaine for a roll call.
Thank you. Chair Hilpert,
I'm here.
Commissioner Case,
Here.
Commissioner Holtrop,
Here.
Commissioner Workman,
Here.
Commissioner Dent,
Here.
Commissioner Fitch, and Commissioner Anderson is excused. Commissioner Harrington. Did he log in?
He did not.
Commissioner Smith,
Present.
Commissioner Clark,
Here.
Commissioner Shane,
Present.
Commissioner Craver,
Here.
Commissioner Vaughn.
Present.
Commissioner Dalbert Griffin is excused. Commissioner Spruce is excused as well. Commissioner Neely.
She's on mute, but I saw her just say here.
Thank you. Commissioner Chan
Here.
and Commissioner Pink is excused. That completes roll call.
Well, thank you. Next on the agenda is meeting minutes, approval of the July 27th meeting. Do we have any edits, revisions from any commissioners? And if not, can I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Joe. A
Second.
second by Nancy. Charmaine, can you call a vote to approve the minutes?
Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes.
Commissioner Fitch is excused. Commissioner Holtrop, Commissioner Holtrop,
Sheila, you're on mute.
We can try coming back to her, I guess.
Okay, just,
Sorry.
thank you. Did she say something?
Yes.
What was your vote?
Yes. Sorry,
Thank
I was
you.
having trouble with audio. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Anderson is excused. Commissioner Craver,
Yes.
Commissioner Neely,
Yes.
Commissioner Workman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dent,
Yes.
Commissioner Spruce is excused. Commissioner Harrington is also excused. Commissioner Shane,
Yes.
Commissioner Dalbert Griffin is excused. Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Chan,
Yes.
Commissioner Pink is excused. Chair Hilbert,
I'll abstain.
motion passes. The vote is 11-0, 1 abstention.
All right, next item is non-agenda public comments. I don't believe we received any through the web form. Is that correct, Charmaine?
That is correct. Thank you.
And then I see we have one attendee. If anyone wants to make a non-agenda public comment, you can go ahead and raise your hand and I can unmute you. I'm not seeing any, so I'll keep an eye on that just in case, and then we're going to move on. The first thing we have is our educational topic. We actually haven't had one of these for a while. Obviously with COVID, it made things a little bit complicated. But the police department has recently created a new unit to basically review all uses of force. So I had a brief conversation with one of the sergeants over there, and we decided to invite them to kind of explain a little bit more to the commission, to the public, what this new unit's going to do, the makeup of it, and what they're hoping to get out of that. So with that, I will turn it over to Captain Wes Morris to introduce your team, and then we're going to have a short presentation, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions from the commissioners to ask any questions about the use of force unit or use of force analytics unit, and then we can move on. So Captain Morris, go ahead.
Chair Hilpert, thanks so much. I appreciate you bringing letting our team come in. So that's correct. About a year ago, Chief wanted to look at all of our use of force incidents, a way in which we can look at all uses of force, how we can analyze that, how we can look and analyze at de-escalation, because that's something that's kind of difficult to quantify. And so, and then also to take that information and go forward with it on best practices and also ways that we can potentially reduce uses of force or minimize it. So really a deep dive into the whole topic. And so Chief chose Lieutenant Mayer. He's been on the department. I won't steal his thunder, but he's been on the department for over 30 years to kind of start heading this up. And then we put together a small team, and they've been working on this and developed our force analysis unit. So I'll be quiet now. I'll kick it over to Lieutenant Mayer and Sergeant Estrada, who I think both of you probably, I know you remember, all of you probably remember Sergeant Estrada from his IA days, and let them talk about the specifics and kind of get in the weeds a little bit of what the program and how this unit's going to work. So with that, I'll turn it over to them.
So this is Lieutenant Kevin Mayer. I've been in the department for 31, almost 32 years. And in my current assignment as a lieutenant, I've worked 12 different assignments, and I was very fortunate to be selected for this opportunity. We selected Sergeant Elias Estrada because of his investigative background and his internal affairs background. And he's obviously worked with many of you. And we've made a lot of strides. I'm going to turn it over to Elias to talk about those. And if there's any questions of me or him after this, you can feel free to ask.
Thank you, Lieutenant. It's Elias Estrada. It's good to see a lot of you again. So as Captain Morris mentioned, the unit was created a little over a year ago now, and it was as a result of our chief being keenly aware of just how the issue of force, and he really wanted to provide the highest quality of service to all of this public, and really to fall in line with our mission statement as a department. So as a result, the unit was created, and is currently staffed of myself as a sergeant and 2 officers. And again, as Captain Morris mentioned, the purpose of the unit is to really closely monitor how we use force. And this is how force is utilized at a national level and at the state level in order to track just current trends and best practices. For us, we're really looking for tracking what we now track, which was not tracked before, which is a show of force. And in order, again, to develop and to identify any trends with regards to how the department as a whole uses force. The overall purpose is to determine whether or not we need to modify our use of force practices, or we need to change them altogether, or potentially even just start all over. That in essence is the why. The unit is also to be apprised of all best practices with regards to use of force throughout the country. And we accomplish this through a variety of ways. We review every force event, which, as you can imagine, is a little bit of an undertaking. As we do that, we review body-worn camera footage as well as any associated reports with the body-worn camera footage. And again, we're looking for the effectiveness of the force and what things went well and what things could be done better, best based on our observations. And based on that, if we see any things that need to be modified, then because we fall under the training division, our in-service training unit, which is responsible for training throughout the department, we can literally reach across the board and identify whatever trend with regards to use of force is taking place. And if something needs to be modified, then that can be implemented So currently, again, we're in our infancy stages. We're currently collecting data. And what I mean by that is, again, since we're now tracking and capturing show of force, we're getting all of that and really kind of doing a deep dive into how show of force as well as use of force comes into play with department-wide. So we want to be a resource to the chief's office as well as any command that throughout the city that in this regard, with regard of use of force. Are there any questions that I can answer specifically about the force analysis unit?
And I just had to turn myself off mute. Before we go into that, I did have a conversation with the sergeant. I was going to go by first names. We had a conversation about that about a week ago, just kind of get more information about what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it. And then just some of my notes, because he didn't quite bring it up, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. As he said, they're looking at how force was used, was it effective, and to try to see if there's ways to mitigate future uses of force. They're going to be looking at things like tenure, the years of experience of the officer, presence of canines on individual cases, and of course, the goal is reducing the use of force. The one thing that he did share with me, and then if you want to chime in and add a little bit more to this, is right now it appears San Diego Police Department is the largest agency in California that will be tracking show of force and creating a dedicated unit. The only other one is LAPD. They do something similar, but right now they only report on the stats. They don't really look at the analysis of how that force was used and whether or not that was effective. And then the other thing that he did talk about is they're trying to figure out that they're not tracking how the show of force kind of dovetails into de-escalation. So I know this is something that's new. I did send an email to the chief of police and also Chris, who's here as well. Sorry, McGrath is here. And I was asking at some point in the future, obviously, once the unit's been up and running, is that data going to be public? Is that something that's going to be shared with the commission? And I know they're probably looking at that information. We haven't heard back on that one yet. But with that, I'll open it up to any commissioners who want to ask questions.
So, well, I was going to ask the same question, whether or not the reports are going to be made public.
I agree. I believe that question is better suited at a higher level within the department.
Like with anything, we're a resource for the chief, and I think that he'll definitely use the information that we gather to share. I don't know what the reports will look like or anything like that, but we're certainly going to use that information to pass on to the public. Elias, do you mind, in case somebody doesn't know, can you kind of give a little example or give them an example of what show of force is, what that terminology means to us versus use of force? I think it's kind of self-evident, but it'd be good to maybe give them an idea of what, the way we've broken it down now, if you don't mind.
And not at all, sir. So anytime an officer draws or displays or exhibits any of the tools that are on their belt, for example, if an officer displays their OC spray or their baton, but does not actually use it, then that is now being tracked as a show of force. Why? Because the force tool was displayed and but it wasn't utilized. So we're beginning to track that now, and we categorize that as a de-escalation because based on the display of that tool, if that tool was not utilized and the event came to a resolution without the use of force, then that's why we categorize it on the de-escalation side. So and again, and that goes with every force tool that's on an officer's belt, as well as the beanbag shotgun, for example. So anytime the OC spray, the baton, the beanbag shotgun, anytime those come out, then again, that is now being tracked and it gets categorized as a show of force versus a use of force where a baton is utilized or OC sprayed or somebody is sprayed with OC. Then that clearly is a use of force. The pointing of a firearm, as you all know, is also a documented or use of force. So that still remains the same.
I see you have a couple of questions, but let me interject real quick. And I know you've all reviewed cases before. You can imagine that you have a scenario where you have a couple of officers, you have one that's talking to the person, one that maybe has a taser, and one that has OC out. And ultimately they talk to the person, that person complies, and no force is ever used. There'll be reports about what was done, but it's really kind of hard to capture that that was a de-escalation event. But now through this way of capturing the information, we can say, look, that we came and when we did these things, when we use these de-escalation techniques or these tools, it created a de-escalated the entire event to where no force was necessary. We can capture that a little better and get a little better dive into what's working and what isn't.
I know we have 3 questions. I'm going to try to go in order. Nancy was first, Doug, you're next, and then Marty. So Nancy, you're up first.
Okay, I had a couple questions. Can we send questions or reports of things that we see to this new group, or do we just wait for the report to come out? In other words, we might see things in the cases that we're reviewing.
Let me jump in first, and then I'll let the use of force analysis team go over it. By the time we get a complaint, they should have already reviewed that use of force. Their goal, and I think actually I realized they didn't talk about this. Their goal is to review all use of force instances within 60 days. So typically by the time we as a commission review a complaint, that's going to be way beyond that 60 days. So theoretically, they should have already reviewed that. They should have, if they saw anything, they should have brought that up with training, and address those issues. So it's a little bit, probably several steps before we would actually get it. So I think the short answer to your question is probably no. But I'll let Wes or anyone on his team speak to that.
Yeah, I would say stay with the internal affairs. If you see something or you see a concern, work through internal affairs, and they can work with us about a question you might have, or we can stay within that chain there.
Okay, are the officers now reporting non-use of just displaying force? I mean, is that something that's part of their force report? Okay, and so then I'm thinking of body worn camera that I've seen of officers standing in line at a protest, 25 across the road, all with their batons out. Are they all going to have to report it? I mean, this just sounds like, in the case of these protests, like a massive incident.
I'll take that one on, Nancy. So
Okay.
the short answer is yes. So the way the systems, and we're utilizing Blue Team, which of course you all know Blue Team feeds into the IA Pro database. But yes, if an officer displays a baton, for example, and it's one event, and then they will all get tabulated as one collective show of force versus having X number of shows of force, X amount of times. It kind of makes more sense. We didn't want to skew the show of force numbers, to say that, on this day, X amount of officers used a show of force 500 times. That number is, I'm sorry, I cut myself off. That number is truly not a true representation, right? So the way that it's tabulated is it's as a one show of force event. If, however, there is a group of officers that are staged one place and then move to another place, and then batons come out in that place, then that's a second show of force. I know it's a kind of a technical answer, but we really
Oh,
didn't.
it helps.
You-
It helps.
Yeah. We didn't really want to skew the numbers to where, again, we have 500 shows of force when in reality it was just one event or one incident.
Okay, thank you.
Doug, you're up next.
Yeah, I think my question was answered. My question was, will officers be required to document show of force as well as use of force? And I think the answer is yes. Is that correct?
That is correct, Doug. That is correct. So right now, if, for example, 3 officers show up and one officer utilizes force, whether that's through a control hold or any other way, and the other officer, say, for example, one officer brought a beanbag out but did not utilize the beanbag, then the officer that used the physical or the controlling force, the physical strength, that officer would categorize that as a use of force. And the officer that brought the beanbag but did not utilize it, then that officer would only categorize it as a show of force for the beanbag being displayed only.
And it can also be where you've got one officer using both show of force and use of force. So the officer may display his taser, put it back in the holster, and then go physical hands-on. And therefore you should be documenting show of force and use of force in the same incident.
And I want to just add to that, Doug, because show a use of force, as we all know, procedurally speaking, requires a report, a written report. A show of force only requires that there is an entry made in blue team that is subsequently fed into the IA Pro system. So there's two different things there. I just want to make sure that I clarified that.
Marty, you had your hand up and then now it's down. I don't know if your question got answered.
No, I want to know if a firearm unholstered and held at low ready, is that a show of force or a use of force?
Marty, that's a great question. A firearm at the low ready would be a show of force only. So an officer would not be required to write a narrative type of report, but would be required to enter a blue team entry as a show of force only.
Pointing a firearm at somebody is still a show of force.
Pointing a firearm at somebody is actually a use of force, as you know. So.
Do you have any other questions? I have one clarifying question, but I want to make sure all the commissioners have a chance to ask questions before I jump in. Okay, well, I'm not seeing it, so I'll jump in. The one question I think that the public is probably going to have is if someone files a complaint, is this use of force analysis, does that get included in the internal affairs file associated with that complaint? And if not, what's the process?
Yeah, they won't be, we're looking at the uses of force and the shows of force as a whole, as opposed to individual events. So there won't be a report on an individual event unless we look at something and see something that's out of the norm or something that comes up. So if you have something that looks, as we review it, and we don't see anything that stands out, then it'll be documented, it's been reviewed, and we're talking about how we're going to store that, but it won't be a specific event, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if I'm clear enough for you.
I think so. I'm just thinking, like, say, for example, again, it's like kind of the example I was using earlier today is I get pulled over for running a red light, and for some reason the officer pulls out his taser, and then I file a complaint. You guys will still review that use of force independent of the complaint, correct?
That's correct.
And then is there any, sorry, go ahead.
There won't be a report from us about that use of force that would be attached to any kind of IA file. But we are capturing that data separately that may have not been captured before. Well, if it was pointed a firearm at you, then it would have been captured before. But there's not like a separate report. If you're doing your IA reviews, you won't have an extra form in there. There won't be anything new from the force analysis unit.
Got it. So I think, and this is probably a follow-up for later once you guys have been around for a while, I think probably the question we as a commission would have is how do we get some of the information that you guys have found from your learnings from this new unit? Is it kind of a summary document that says here we've had 400 uses of force or shows of force? I guess we'd like to see some kind of data back. Eventually I would think that it makes sense for the community to see that as well. But I know you guys are new and trying to figure out how everything's going to work and how reports are going to be done. But I think that's something that, we as a commission, I think would definitely be interested in seeing that data and, ultimately seeing, is the show of force effective at minimizing uses of force? Obviously I'll speak for myself, not the whole commission, but that's something that I would really want to see. And I think the public would expect the commission to be able to review. Diane, I see your hands up.
So it's the collection of the data, is it by division or is it in some other way that you're tabulating these show of force or actual force?
It's collected department wide, and we have the ability to separate that data by division. But to answer your question, it's collected department-wide.
So so is it broken down into the different divisions so you can see where there's a more show of force or really, force being used?
Yes.
How would that be disaggregated for the public or for the departments, as you say, for training purposes?
Right. And the IA Pro system is a very robust system, and it allows us to do just that, is disaggregate the data, and we would be able to do that by division.
Thank you.
Any other questions? The one thing I'll add that, I mean, some commissioners may be aware of, and the conversation I had with the sergeant last week, I did bring up the EIIS, which I'm going to get this wrong, early intervention identification system, I think. So the goal of that tool is to basically use kind of big data to decide and to see and flag if officers might be doing things that could, I would say, essentially cause problems, but give their supervisors a way to kind of pull them aside and mentor them if they see that they're starting to get more complaints against, for courtesy, or they're tending to write tickets against a certain demographic or something like that. There's that tool, and then there's this, which is separate. And I actually asked, are they connected in any way? And actually the answer I got was, and again, please correct me if I misspeak, my understanding was no, they're completely separate, because the data from one does not feed into the other. And so the EIIS system is really more of a preventative, and then the new unit is going to be looking at after the fact of a show or a use of force, what could have been done differently. So they're two tools that are still kind of trying to do the same thing of make changes to behavior and make sure that the policing is being done properly, but they don't necessarily talk to each other, and they're kind of independent of each other. And if you guys can explain that in a better way, by all means, please do. But I did want to bring that up because I think there's an important piece that comes into play, because that the EIIS tool is helpful. And I know you guys, obviously you guys, but the department uses that every day to look at what officers are doing and try to mentor officers where needed. And if I said anything incorrect or you want to correct anything, please do.
I think basically that covers it. The EIIS system is more specific to the officer, whereas our system is going to be looking more overall on a more global scale of what trends we're seeing.
Perfect. Well, unless there's any last questions, I don't see any hands up. So Captain and Sergeant and Lieutenant, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate the information on this. I know this is something that's new. I'm sure we'll be bugging you in a few months to kind of see what data you've been able to find so far. But I think this is a great progress. I thank the department for doing this, because I think it's very important for you guys to be able to look at that data and be proactive. So thanks again for your time, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you guys in several months.
Yeah, no, we appreciate the opportunity. We look forward to it, and like I said, just once we get something, we'll be available for you. We'll see you.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
All again, take care.
All right. With that, we'll go on to unfinished business. And I can actually I'm going to share the agenda just so we have it. Give me 1 second. All right. So for the first item we have here, closed session meetings for September, as we have for many months. I will send out a doodle poll. We have a backlog of cases which Charmaine's going to be going into once we get to her presentation. But we're probably going to need to do more than our just standard 2 closed sessions for the month. I think for right now, we're going to try to skip next Tuesday, the 31st, I believe it is. Our current plan is to have the first closed session meeting be Tuesday, the 7th of September. But like I said, I will send out a doodle poll to all the commissioners so we can figure out what dates work for our calendars. Again, one of the issues we've had is we have a lot of cases that are coming up for review. We're trying to make sure we can hear those and close out those cases so we can let the complainants know what the situation was with their complaint. And we also want to make sure that we're not delaying any potential discipline for cases that have sustained findings. So with that, does anyone have any questions or comments about closed session meetings for next month? I'm going to open up another window so I can see people raise their hands. All right, with that, we'll go into the case review side. I know we've kind of been talking about this for quite a while. We're trying to prioritize the cases based on cases that are getting close to their 1 year mark for the public after 1 year. After the complaint date, if there is sustained findings, the officers cannot be disciplined. That's per California law. So we're trying to make sure that we get all of those taken care of. We're working with internal affairs. They're sending us lists of any cases that are getting within 60 days of that 1 year mark, so we can make sure that we're getting those addressed properly. And then we'll be trying to also work on kind of that workflow with the various teams. So I know Charmaine's been following up with most teams on that. I've been helping with a couple teams, just trying to make sure we're getting through the cases and our backlog. I think we're right around 80 cases, which is a lot. I think historically in the 6 years I've been on the board, now commission, I think the highest we ever got to is 60. So we obviously are getting a lot more complaints that are coming in. This obviously happened ever since last year. We have about 3 times as many complaints coming in. So there's a lot of work for both internal affairs and the commission.
Let me just, if I can clarify, we're down to 68 cases, so that's really good. I know the teams have been doing a great job in moving the cases forward. So I want to thank the teams for doing that, but we're down to 68.
Which is good, because when we saw the 80 a while ago, I think we were all freaking out a little bit. So that's a positive. Status on discipline cases. We've been working closely with the detective and internal affairs to follow up with the divisions to make sure that cases that had sustained findings, that we're getting those discipline memos back. And that way we can present them in closed session and have the commission be able to review that discipline and whether or not we agree with the discipline that was administered. So obviously, as we get those, the detective is putting those into your team folders, and then usually we'll follow up just to kind of make sure that those are getting reviewed, and then we'll present those to the commission as we've been doing. Wanted to try to get any feedback on remote case access. I know we've kind of had a couple struggles here and there. Nancy brought up a question about watching body cameras over the secure Google Drive. When she tries to fast forward, she was telling me sometimes it always goes back to the very beginning. I think I showed her how to fix that. But if there's anyone that has questions or concerns, I know we're still working on trying to get the audio for recording, interview recordings. We're trying to get those kind of figured out. I know there's a couple of workarounds. Doug, I think, was able to get it to work on his iPad or tablet. I was actually able to get it to work on my tablet once I got a new one. So apparently my old tablet was too old to let it work. But I know that's an area of difficulty for some commissioners. So I wanted to open up to any concerns people have on remote case access. If anyone. I'm not seeing any hands or anything like that, so I'll keep moving on. The other thing we're doing and wanted to get some feedback on this was the new case presentation format. Just to kind of give a quick summary for the public, what we decided to do is, instead of having this very robust, sometimes 10 to 15 page report that we'd writing, we were trying to cut it down to just the bare facts for the allegations, what the issues were, what happened, any applicable code or policies, and then what the resolution was. So the idea is we're not doing less work, we're just writing less to try to make those reports be more concise and easier to present and take hopefully a little bit less time in writing up those reports. So with that, I do want to open up to anyone who would like to address or talk about those reports.
I think.
Nancy, go ahead.
So I was noticing in Sheila's on one of the reports tonight, there's no, and some of the cases that I'm getting, there's no height and weight for the officers. And I think we should have height and weight for all of the officers in our reports. The template that we have had for quite a few years calls for height and weight for all of the officers. And I'd like to see that provided going forward. How do we make that happen? I mean, it always has been, so I would like to recover it.
I'll chat with IA about that. I think that should be in there, but because I agree it's important. I'll have a conversation with IA and we can make sure that those are in the reports. Charmaine, I see your hand up.
Well, I think this item, feedback on new case presentation format, is how the commission is actually presenting the cases to the other commissioners. So I think because everybody receives the case reports in advance and everybody's reading the case reports, I think that the presentation needs to be a little bit shorter. Just a high-level summary of the allegations, internal affairs findings, and what exactly the team saw when they reviewed the cases. Just because, everybody's reading the cases beforehand and getting familiar with the cases, and then we come to the meeting and then, we're going over the same thing again. So I just wanted to provide that feedback.
Sheila wins. The fastest presentation we've ever had.
Status of case, sorry, I didn't mean to close that one out too fast. Does anyone else want to chime in on that one?
Yes, I was just thanks, Nancy. I try to make it literate, at least as I'm speed reading. I was just going to comment regarding the case. Sometime when I get the I report, unless it's a complaint of force, I notice that there is no height and weight, because of course males have more muscle mass than females, but not all the time. I mean, that's why I wasn't too concerned with it when it's not a complaint of force, because then I do weigh the height and the weight, but I'm perfectly good with if it's on all of them too. I just always noticed that was something that if it was an allegation of force, then the height and weight is very important to have in there. That was all. Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, I'll talk with the captain of IA and we can discuss that. But I agree, it probably should be in there. The status of case summaries, just to kind of remind everyone, what we're trying to do is we want to be able to have the summaries of each of the cases. It's a redacted version that we want to be able to put up on the website, so the public can actually kind of see the types of complaints that we're getting and reviewing and how those cases are addressed. So the process, again, it's a little bit messy, but what we have to do is once we write it, we're going to have our outside counsel review it, and then we're also going to have the police department's legal counsel review it, just to make sure there's no information that cannot be released, and then we'll put that up on our website, and those will also eventually go into our annual reports as well. Nancy, you have your hand up.
Can we do a couple of test cases, Brandon? I think you mentioned doing that before.
Yeah.
And I'd like to, can I pick one or two and put them through just to see if we've got the right level? Is
Sure.
that the right way to put that? I'd like to, but we need to make that happen soon because they're building up and we need to keep working on them.
Yeah, and I just for everyone, I started that process and I pulled a couple that I was going to send out to our outside counsel first. And I will be completely honest, I pulled a couple and they're sitting in my draft email. So I will work on that.
Good, I'd like to contribute one.
Okay, I'll reach out to you on that one. Marty.
Yeah, for quite a while, every time I completed a case, our team has been doing the redacted summary, but I've gotten no feedback if that's what we want. So could, I don't know, can somebody be looking at this to let us know we're following the right path?
Sure, and I actually, a couple of your team's reports were the ones I was pulling that I was going to send to our legal counsel. But I haven't, like I said, I have not sent that to her yet. Part of it is we have a limited budget, and so I'm trying to be diligent with the limited funds we have available for outside counsel. So for right now, what I'm trying to do is I'd like to get a couple examples, and then we can send that to all of our commissioners, and that way we can use that as a format of what's been approved. And that way we'll all kind of know exactly how to format and how to write our summaries. But like I said, I apologize. I was the delay on that when I started that process and I got busy with other things, but I will pick that up and then I will let you guys know where things are on that one. Nancy, is your hand up again, or is it still up from your, okay. Charmaine.
Sorry.
Yes, I think we did, like when we originally started to do the case summaries, we created a template, and we also did like a draft case summary from a case. So I can go back and check and see if we have that still. everybody was fine with it at that time, so.
Yeah, I think you're right. We did, and that's what all the teams were following that format. But what we wanted to do is we actually wanted to run it through the legal process as well. So our
I think-
outside counsel and the
think it
departments can
Yeah,
actually
I
look at
think
real
it can.
cases. Yeah. Okay.
I think they go through our legal counsel, and I think we also had PD legal at the table. So
Okay.
I can go back and check and then look at my notes as well, but I think we did agree on having that summary to be shared with
We
the
agreed on
board.
a format, Charmaine, but what I remember was a made-up case that we created a fake case and wrote a redacted summary that went with that.
It was a fake
Not,
case
was not a real case.
it was a fake case then, right? And
Yes.
all filled out.
Yes, it
Okay, so
was.
I'll go back and look and see if we have that, because we can probably use that as a template. I'm just thinking right now with outside counsel, we only had 25,000 allocated to outside counsel for this fiscal year until we open up the RFP process. And that money is like halfway gone. So we have to pick and choose what she's gonna be working on. I think she's still working on some other assignments, so.
Right.
You have to keep that in mind.
Okay, the other thing I did want to talk to everyone about and get feedback on is internal affairs asked if we wanted to have Sunday hours as well. The one thing that I will say is I want to make sure that if we are going to ask someone from internal affairs to be there, which is going to be overtime for the police department, that we make sure that we have people there. It's happened rarely, but I know sometimes we've said we're going to be there and no one shows up. And so you have someone in internal affairs who's basically there for several hours expecting us to show up, and we don't do that. So they had offered to have Sunday hours if that's something that commissioners would need to be able to use to go in there. So I want to open that up to get feedback from anyone. Nancy, I see your hand up.
I would be there every Sunday. I'm there every Saturday, and I haven't missed one yet. So Sunday would be fine with me too, if they really want to do it.
Okay. Anybody else? I'll put that in my email as well. The one thing is I as much as possible, if we're going to have IA open for the weekend hours, I'd like to make sure that we're actually taking advantage of them. Let me rephrase that. I want to make sure we're taking advantage of the hours that are available, not taking advantage of internal affairs. But I want to make sure that, you know, we have the opportunity to do that. So I know, Nancy, somehow I knew you would want to be there. So I have you down on the list, but I will check to see if there's anyone else that'd be interested as well. I know sometimes I go in on Saturdays.
They only staff for the number of people that they know are coming in, Brandon. So
right.
when I'm the only person there, they only have one person with me. And so it's easy that way.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to new business. We have a couple things here. One of the ones, and actually I'm going to share. Well, actually, I'll just show you. The first thing was the approval of a draft public memo on CBP recommendations regarding the police department's use of force opinions. So what we've done, there's a confidential memo. And so what we're trying to do here is do a version that can be public to share what our recommendations were. The only thing that changed from this is this third bullet down here. We actually moved that on their memo. That became the first bullet. That's the only change. So for the public, these recommendations have already been approved by the commission. And again, we sent a confidential memo to the police department. I think it was a little over a week ago. This is basically just approving this, well, what will be this public memo that'll go on our website that basically just shares what our policy recommendations were on how to draft those use of force opinions. So with that, I will open it up to any debate or comments. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any. So if anyone has questions on this, I'm more than happy to try to answer those. Again, this is just formalizing what our policy recommendations were. one of the things that we've committed to doing is trying to be transparent. And when we're making policy recommendations, we want to make sure the public is aware of what those are. And then typically the department, hopefully within 30 days or so, will reply back to us in writing and let us know whether or not they will implement them or if they can't. Like I said, this memo I think went out last week. So with that, can I get a motion to approve this memo?
So moved.
I have a motion by Joe,
Second,
second by Nancy. And Charmaine, did I hear you starting to ask a question?
Yes, I just had a couple of questions. So with this memo, who is it addressed to?
Yeah,
And,
so that's a great question.
also, should it be somewhere in here that this is a public version? There should be some type of language in there that says this is a public version. I don't think I see that in here.
No. Here, let me stop sharing. I will share my Word doc. All right, so this is a little bit messy because typically we don't do a confidential memo and then follow it up with a public version. So I'm not sure if this is what makes the most sense, just to say it's to the members of the public. We can kind of wordsmith that. And then, as I said, I just redid the formatting here to match what our official recommendation was in the confidential memo to the police department. But other than that, what I can do is I can make a note that this is the public release of our policy recommendations.
Maybe it shouldn't be a memo. Maybe it shouldn't be a memo because
I could just do it in like a letter format.
like a press release?
it should be some type of because it's going onto the website and it's
Right.
open to the public.
Yeah, you
Well,
can just
maybe
make it like a public statement or whatever, so it's-
Okay. So yeah, I think what I'll do is I will use this base information here and I'll just do a public statement press release type thing. Because I know I agree the memo format is kind of funky because it's not really what we're trying to do here, but I guess what I would do then is see if our motion makers will basically the content that we have here, basically the 3 paragraphs, as the City of San Diego's Police Oversight Commission, and then going down to our recommendations, that would pretty much stay the same. I'll just change the format. With that, Joe, are you still comfortable with your motion?
Yes, yes, I am.
Nancy, are you comfortable with your second still?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I think the motion is to approve the content of what will be our public statement on the use of force opinions. And with that, Charmaine, can you call a vote, please?
Sure. Commissioner Case,
yes,
Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes,
Commissioner Fitch is excused, Commissioner Holtrump,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson is excused, Commissioner Craver,
Yes.
Commissioner Neely,
Yes.
Commissioner Workman,
yes,
Commissioner Dent,
Yes,
Commissioner Harrington is excused, Commissioner Shane,
Yes.
Commissioner Dalbert Griffin is excused, Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
the chair abstains, Commissioner Chan,
Yes.
and Commissioner Pink is excused. Motion passes. The vote is 11-0, 1 abstention.
how did the dogs vote?
All righty. I'm gonna share my screen and get back to the agenda. So new business B, as we've experienced a little bit, is we're having some issues with quorum. Basically, our last or two closed sessions ago, we actually had to not hold our meeting because we were unable to hold quorum, and our actually open session today, we were a little bit delayed while we were trying to wait till we had full quorum. So our rules committee reviewed and made a recommendation for a change. And I'll pull it up in a second here. And Doug, I'll let you kind of speak to this if you'd like. But basically, this is the section of the bylaws about voting in quorum. It's basically a red line version of what we're going to be striking out and how we're going to be modifying that. And Doug, I'll let you pick it up from there as chair of rules.
Okay. Well, as you can see there, our current bylaws require a specific number to be a quorum, and that number is 12, which is based on the premise that we would have 23 seats. And the reality is that we have less than 23 seats filled right now. I think right now we're down to 16, whatever the number is. What other boards and commissions in the city of San Diego have done is to set a requirement that a majority of those seats that are filled is what constitutes a quorum. And that's what this bylaw does, although it does set it basically a floor. So you would have to have a minimum of 7, which would mean that if we ever drop between lower than 12 seats, we would still need to have 7 people present. Because if you have 12 seats, a majority of that would be 7. And so this is saying that if we ever were to drop to fewer than 12 seats filled, we would still need to have 7 members 7 members present. The situation has evolved because the city council nor the mayor's office currently have the legal ability to appoint new members to the commission. Measure B indicated that the former members of the CRB, as they existed at the time, would become the initial members of the commission. And we were successful in getting the city council to almost fill the board prior to Measure B going into existence, but we've had some attrition since then. The only way we can add new members now is for the city council to adopt an ordinance which gives them the ability to add new members. And indeed, the commission had recommended to the city council that they do the implementation ordinance in 2 phases. The first phase being one that would would determine how commissioners would be appointed, and then to appoint the permanent members of the commission. But the city council decided to do it all in one step. And so right now we can't proceed with adding new members until the implementation ordinance has been drafted, gone through meet and confer, and approved by the city council. If our numbers continue to decline, we will probably put pressure on them to develop an interim ordinance or something to allow us to fill the seats. But regardless, this would allow us to have a majority be a majority of the seats filled, so that we don't get into a situation where we can't have a quorum and we are unable to conduct business. So this allows us to conduct business under our current situation. So hopefully I've explained it good enough. If not, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Gonna open it up to discussion or debate. And first I see Nancy's hand up.
There, I just want to make sure I understand. What you've written here says a minimum number of 7 commissioners. So our quorum could be 7 people?
No, it would be a majority of the filled seats. But if our number of filled seats dropped below 12, then it would still require 7. So say, for example, and hopefully we wouldn't get this far, but say we were to drop to 10 members, a majority of 10 members would be 6. And in that case, we would be required to have a minimum number of 7. So this is just kind of an insurance policy, so that we know we have to have a certain minimum, but the answer was no. So currently, if we have, say we have 17 members right now, in that case, the majority would be, a quorum would be 9 instead of the current 12.
Okay, so still a minimum number of 7 commissioners is considered quorum at some point, and then the majority of those to make decisions is 4. Am I understanding that one right too?
Yes, if we were to drop below 12 members and we only had a minimum of we had the minimum number necessary to reach quorum. And a majority of that would be 4 yes.
So we're going from requiring 10 people to agree on decisions on case review to saying we could have as few as 4 making those decisions.
Theoretically, that would be possible. It would be a worst case scenario. I think what we're going to be dealing with is, basically what we have now. We probably will get down to maybe 15, which would mean that a quorum would be 8, and so a majority would be, in that case, 5. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But it's better to be able to make a decision than to not be able to conduct any business at all. And so if we weren't able to do that, then we could find ourselves in a situation, say for example, we don't change the bylaws and we drop to 12 members, or say if we drop down to 11 members, we would have to cease operation because it would be impossible to get a quorum. Or if we were to drop to say 12 or 13, it would be almost impossible to conduct business unless we had 100% attendance at every meeting. And so this is to kind of guarantee that we'll be able to do business in this interim period, given the fact that we have unfilled seats that we are unable to fill.
I don't really like this going from having a vote for 30 years of 10 people on case review decisions, letting it go down as low as 4 or even 5 cuts it in half, the value of our position and our votes. I also don't think just because other boards and commissions have done this, that is a reason for us to do it. I understand what you're saying, and I don't like the situation that we're in, but I just don't think we have beaten hard enough on the city council before we make this as a very serious change for us.
But we have gone to the city council, and as I said, it requires creating an ordinance, which is not an easy thing to do. And I would venture to say that the public would be up in arms if we were to cease operation because we failed to change our bylaws and we had the opportunity of doing so.
I was just going to chime in on what Doug said. The goal is we won't ever have to get to a point where, to Nancy's concern, we only have 4 or 5 people that are deciding the fate of a case. Now that's rare that we've actually gotten to that level, as it was, well, still today until we vote on it. With that number of 10, you have to have 10 commissioners vote one way or the other to move a case forward. I think in my 6 years on the board and commission, I think that's really only happened with like 3 cases. So it's rare, but it does happen. Now, that being said, I completely agree with Doug. I think the bigger tragedy would be if we have some people that resign for, personal reasons, family, health, work, whatever reasons, that they have to leave the commission. I don't think we want to get to a point where the commission just stops operating because we cannot have meetings. I think that would be a huge disservice to the city of San Diego, and I don't think that's what the community wants. So I think this is the best option that we have now until we have our new implementation ordinance that's completed by the city council. Kind of mostly for the public, I know everyone on the commission is aware of this. We have had multiple meetings with all of the city council members on public safety, livable neighborhoods. We've alerted them to the concern. I'll be completely honest, right now, there's not the political will to move this faster. Partially, I think it's because we're not there yet. If we get to the point where the commission stops operating, then they might suddenly make a decision to do something, but they're just not going to do it right now. So I think to Doug's point, it really kind of falls on us to make this change. It's an easy change for us to make. It can also be changed at some point in the future. Once the implementation ordinance is completed and we want to, we or whoever takes our places, once they decide they want to change the bylaws, that's an easy thing for them to do. So I'm in full support of this. I mean, typically I won't vote on these, but I'm in full support of this measure. I think it'll allow the commission to continue to do the important job of police oversight in San Diego. So with that, I was going to say, I want to open up to other commissioners, and Joe, go ahead.
I am in favor of Doug's position. Also, I'd like to comment on Nancy because I've been on the board for now off and on for 12 years, and it was not that complicated. Although we had a very difficult time getting board members, but the times have changed, and I think that we're very, very close in our present position of a quorum is not having a quorum. I think that we and I hope that this is not the case, but I feel that we are going to be losing commissioners, and and those are not going to be replaced. I think that we can continue to need to be able to lower our quorum so we can go ahead and do our business. I think the public expects us to do that, and to do anything less would be not fully supporting them. So this may be early for a motion, and I don't want to stop comment. So I would like to make a motion for approval.
We have a motion by Joe. Do we have a second?
Well, it comes from committee, so it doesn't require a second.
Oh, you're right. Thank you. Are there any other comments? The one comment I will make is just as today's meeting is an example of the 18 commissioners we have 6 absences and excused absences. So we barely met quorum today, which is becoming much more of a common issue. So it's a very I would say it's a pressing issue for us to be able to address this. And if there's no other comments, which I'm not seeing, Charmaine, can you call a vote, please?
Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
No.
Commissioner Holtrop,
Yes.
Commissioner Fitch is excused. Commissioner Anderson is also excused. Commissioner Craver,
Strong, yes.
Commissioner Neely,
Yes.
Commissioner Workman,
Yes,
Commissioner Dent,
Yes,
Commissioner Shane.
Yes.
Let me just go back. Commissioner Holtrop, what was your vote?
Sorry, yes.
Okay, sorry. Noted. Commissioner Dalbert Griffin is excused. Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
the chair abstains. Commissioner Chan,
Yes.
Commissioner Pink is excused. Motion passes. The vote is 10-0. Actually, let me just do that. Let me just do that again. 10-1, 1 abstention.
Okay. All right. The other item. Try to go back to the agenda real quick. So this one's coming back a little bit. So these are discussion possible action regarding CBB interim executive director compensation and benefits. One thing that we've learned, I would say, we being Charmaine, myself, and Doug have learned is there's a lot of stuff we don't know about how the city works and operates when it comes to creating new offices and moving people around from position to position. So Charmaine is actually going to have to be recused. So I'm going to move her into the waiting room. And then our executive assistant is going to take the vote once we get to that. Give me 1 second. Oh, Charmaine, you're a host. I can't move you to the waiting room.
Let me make you a host.
So basically just high level, the first item here in our last open session, we approved the increase of our executive director's salary. At that point, it was to $180,000. The goal and the objective there is we were trying to have our executive director's salary and benefits match up with the Ethics Commission's benefits. And so with that, now I'm going to try to move her over. Actually, Charmaine, it doesn't look like I can kick you out. I can put you on hold. there we go. That worked. So basically what we're trying to do for that first one, the approval of a salary increase. Again, for the public, just because it's a little bit confusing, what we did last time is we raised her salary to $180,000. That matched the salary of the Ethics Commission's executive director. Now, what we didn't know was that since we were first told that $180,000 salary, the city had given everyone a 4% increase. So now the executive director of the Ethics Commission makes $187,200, I believe it is, but that's inclusive of that 4%. Now, what we're trying to do again is we're trying to make sure that our executive director and the Ethics Commission's executive director basically have, as both independent commissions, that their salaries and their benefits basically match each other. So what we're trying to do here is we need to have a vote to approve basically that 4% salary increase. So again, our executive director's salary matches the Ethics Commission's salary. The Ethics Commission executive director's salary. So with that, before we do a motion, I will open it up to any questions or comments. All right, so the motion, Nancy, go ahead. Nancy, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'd like to make the motion to approve.
Okay, so the motion is to approve a 4% salary increase for our executive director. Are you comfortable with that as reworded? Perfect, okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Alina, can you call a vote, please?
Yes. 1 second. Okay. Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes.
Poppy Fitch is excused. Commissioner Holtrop,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson is excused. Commissioner Craver,
Yes.
Commissioner Neely,
Yes.
Commissioner Workman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dent,
Yes.
Commissioner Spruce is excused. Commissioner Harrington is excused. Commissioner Shea,
Yes.
Commissioner Dober Griffin is excused. Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Okay, and Commissioner Helper is abstained. And then Commissioner Chan,
Yes.
and then Commissioner Fink is excused. So the vote is 11-0 with 1 abstention.
Perfect, thank you. All right, and the other 2 items we have here kind of are along the same line. So in the past, our executive director reported up to the mayor's office. Now that we're an independent commission, things moved around a little bit. So our executive director now officially is not under the mayor's office. Unfortunately, that created a couple of weird, quirky issues. The first one is, and I'll actually show this in a second, the city has something called management administrative leave. And in the past, this was a benefit that Charmaine, as our executive director, was able to take advantage of. That allows, actually, I'll share it real quick. That allows up to 80 hours per fiscal year to be used. So basically, because it's a exempt salary position, our executive director frequently does far more than 40 hours a week. It allows 80 hours to basically be used as administrative leave. Currently, this is the new version. This is only for the people that are within certain categories. So essentially, the mayor's office essentially removed Charmaine's position because she no longer works underneath the mayor's office. So again, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to copy how the Ethics Commission does it. So what we want to do here is make a recommendation to have the city council essentially add us as the Commission on Police Practices to add our executive director here. So I highlighted in gray what the Ethics Commission does, so that essentially you would say the Commission on Police Practices must authorize granting management administrative leave for the police commission executive director, we'd have that in there. So essentially our executive director would be able to have those same benefits. And again, this is a benefit that our executive director used to have when she was underneath the mayor's office. So what we would basically do on that one is, I think it was this one here, is we'd ask them to modify, well, first of all, this first document, which basically says who's entitled to it, and then Exhibit G, which would basically add to the positions that are entitled to get it. We would just add the police commission executive director. So what I'd like to do is do these two measures at the same time, kind of as a consent agenda type item. The second one is a little bit different, but basically our executive director currently does not receive a vehicle allowance, but other areas within the city are. So again, we're trying to match up with Ethics Commission. So what we would also do is make a recommendation to have the city council add the police commission executive director to this exhibit, Exhibit F, to essentially allow a $300 monthly automobile allowance. And again, the idea there is because, you know, as with many of us as commissioners, we drive around quite frequently to go to meetings, to, you know, attend public events. This would be basically to reimburse for some personal vehicle use. So with that, I'll open it up to questions or comments. And first I see Nancy and then Doug.
So I would like to move that we approve both of these items.
Okay.
I will second that.
Okay, before we get to that, I want to let Doug ask his question or anything like that. Doug, go ahead.
You had a question regarding the automobile allowance. Is that a flat fee that each of the people in those categories get? That isn't based on mileage? Is that how that works?
Oh, you know what? I think it might be in here as well. I read this a couple weeks ago when they sent it to us. I believe it is a flat fee. I believe the only issue is, and if I misspeak and I get corrected, I will report back that I said something wrong. But I believe the only time it's if they're driving a city vehicle, like the city gives them a vehicle, which is not going to be the case here, and you drive that vehicle for personal use, you do have to reimburse the city for that personal use. But this is just a flat fee, and this is one of the lower amounts compared to other people within the city that get vehicle allowances. Sorry, I thought I had it. I think it's in here somewhere, but it might be a different document. If not, I'll find it. But basically, it is a set dollar amount monthly. So in this case, for these, right now, it's these 5 groups, it's $300 a month.
You know, Doug, with even with gas approaching $5 a gallon, they're going to eat that up in a hurry. And in my experience, working with organizations, this is probably the lowest compensation type, because a lot of organizations will lease a car to individuals, or they even will buy a car. So all she's doing is getting a car allowance, and I think this is $300. I think, you know, I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah, I wasn't questioning the amount. I just wanted to know how it worked. So.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And when I remember correctly, I believe the highest amount, I want to say, was $800, if I remember correctly. So this is one of the lower vehicle allowances. But again, the goal here is we're trying to make sure, as the city's 2 independent commissions, that the police commission and the ethics commission essentially have their executive directors' salary and benefits essentially at parity, is what we're trying to do. So do we have any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So we have a motion on the table by Nancy and a second by Joe. I'll go back to the agenda just so you can kind of see. So basically, we will, if this passes, I will then write a memo to the city council asking them to amend Exhibit G and F to provide those benefits for our executive director. So with that, Alina, can you call a vote, please?
Yes. Let's see. Commissioner Case?
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn?
Yes.
Let's see. Commissioner Holtrop,
Yes.
Commissioner Craver,
Yes.
Commissioner Neely,
Yes.
Commissioner Workman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dent,
Yes.
Commissioner Shea,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Chair Hilbert, you are abstaining, and then Commissioner Chan,
Yes.
and then Commissioner Fitch, Commissioner Anderson, Commissioner Spruce. Oh my goodness, sorry, Commissioner. I was gonna try to do them at the end. I thought it would be easier. Commissioner Harrington, Dover Griffin, and Pink are all excused. So it's gonna be 11-0 with one abstention.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'll let Charmaine back in. So again, just to explain, the reason why we had to move Charmaine out is because she cannot be involved in discussions, essentially of when we're reviewing and approving any benefits or her compensation. And if we were to do something wrong, we get a call from the personnel department and we get our hands slapped, and actually it can be a little bit worse than that. So basically, to avoid any appearance of Charmaine influencing anything, we removed her from the meeting while we covered those pieces to go over her compensation and benefits. All right, with that, the committee chair reports. First up, Nancy, continuing education.
I want to encourage everybody to attend the NACOL conference, virtual conference that's ongoing right now. And there was one coming up that I think is particularly important. Hold on just a second. That's the wrong one. Okay, on August 31st, there's going to be a session on Oversight Commission and Boards, how member selection criteria and processes can impact effectiveness. And I think it would be a good idea for as many of us as can to sign up for that one if you aren't already. I would like to recommend it to city council people also. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. One of the things we were talking about doing, and we're going to try to see if we can get these taken care of, and this is on the agenda, is trying to get a presentation on Blue Team and the documentation used by Sdpd. Again, Blue Team is kind of what we had a little bit of a presentation on today. It's how various things like use of force are reported and kind of cataloged by the police department. The other thing, Nancy, I think you brought this up a couple months ago, was a presentation on restraining orders and how the police department handles those. And the one thing that we had talked about kind of separately, and I probably should add this on here, was I did a ride along with the homeless outreach team at the beginning of the month. And we were thinking it would be nice to have a presentation about how the homeless outreach team is a little bit different than the rest of the police department, and the fact that they're really going out to provide services rather than enforcement. So what they try to do is
they've given multiple presentations. Yeah. So
it's been a long time and we have new commissioners. So I think it's a good idea to bring them all back. I know on the ride along I did, they were also giving COVID shots in addition to trying to get people benefits for, food stamps and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's
most amazing people.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I think it's something it's probably helpful for the public to also be aware of that, because I don't know if everyone's really truly aware of some of what the police department does when it comes to homeless outreach. So we'll put those up on continuing education for future meetings. Patrick's not here, so he does not have an outreach committee update. I'm not sure. Doug, did you know of anything from transition that he was talking about? I'm not sure if there's anything going on for Patrick on outreach.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Doug, you're up with rules.
Yeah, actually, I should have asked Charmaine to delete item C1 because we went over that last month. And so the only item that the Rules Committee considered was the bylaws change we already voted on. So there's really no report other than that for rules, and the handbook is on hold, and I can give a report on the transition planning committee meeting when we get to that.
Okay. Policy, there's a couple, actually, well, I'll wait until we get to the police department report, but we do have a response from some of our recommendations that we can kind of go over. And there also is a couple things that I wanted to bring up with policy. They've given us some feedback on our protest policy recommendations. A few of them, they broke it down to 3 different categories of things that they're going to implement, things that they need to do a little bit of research on, and things that they will not do. So I want to bring that back to the policy committee, and then we can bring that back to the full commission to review those and see if we have any responses or official feedback. The other thing is there are a couple recommendations that we have outstanding, and there's others that they have already started to implement. So what we're trying to work on is getting some formal responses so we can put that up on the website so the community is aware of what our recommendations have been, and then what the department either has done or will do or won't do. So I'll be working on that probably in the next couple of weeks. And then also I would like to set up a meeting, I'm thinking before the next closed session, so on the 7th. So I will reach out to everyone that's on the policy committee to make sure that works with their schedules. Tuesday, the 7th, prior to the closed session is what I'm thinking of. But I will, like I said, I will talk to all the committee members and see if that works. Does anyone have questions on policy related stuff? The one thing I will say, if any teams have policy recommendations that you've seen from your case reviews or anything like that, please submit them sooner rather than later so I can actually get them into the next meeting so we can discuss those and move those forward. Kevin's not here to talk about recruitment or training, but obviously because we can't really recruit members when we don't know what the selection criteria is for new potential commissioners, that kind of makes it a little bit more difficult. So there's really not a lot going on specifically on recruitment and training. The Citizens Advisory Board on Police Community Relations. I wasn't able to review their last meeting, but we are trying to set up a joint meeting to go over the CPE report that the police department's working on. And I'll touch base on that a little bit in my chair's report a little bit later. But the idea there is to get the 2 groups that kind of interface with the police department to have them do a presentation about what that CPE report is, what the data shows, and then try to come up with solutions to try to make some changes. But like I said, I'll touch base on that a little bit more in the chair's report. And with that, Doug, it's back to you for the transition.
Okay. First is the budget. There really is nothing new on the budget since the city council approved the budget in June and it was signed by the mayor. Quite a bit's happening in the staffing area. I think we had Alina on board last time. We are in the process. We've completed the process of selecting the administrative aide position. The person who was selected is a current city employee in another department who is on health leave until I believe the end of the year. And so Charmaine is looking into the possibility of getting a temporary person for that position until that time. That'll be the person that'll basically serve as the complaints coordinator and also handle our budget and finance. So it's a really important position that we get filled. And then our next position that we're planning on filling is the deputy executive director, who will be the person who serves as our primary community engagement officer. And we're looking at the possibility of utilizing the services of an executive search firm to conduct that search. And we're looking into how we can do that within our budget, since we didn't specifically request that in our budget request. So we're hoping that salary savings will allow us to do that. And then in terms of the legal counsel update, and I forget how much we reported last month, but basically we learned that we are unable to continue our current outside counsel at the, well, let me back up for a second. Last year and in the several previous years, our outside counsel contract was for $25,000. And when we had our budget approved for outside counsel for the next year, we requested $180,000 with the plan that we would utilize outside counsel until we had a permanent executive director and permanent commissioners, and at that point in time, we would select a staff attorney or general counsel. And our plan was to roll over that contract from $25,000 to $180,000, but then we learned after the fact that the city adopted a policy, or actually I believe it's an ordinance, back in I think 2018, that precludes rolling over a contract or increasing a contract by more than $25,000. And so what we have done is extend the contract of our current outside counsel for another $25,000, which then leaves $155,000, which we have to go out on bid. Purchasing and Contracts has completed the RFP for that position, and it'll be going, it'll be sent out. So if anybody knows of anybody who should get a copy of that RFP, you can let Charmaine know, and she can let Purchasing and Contracting know, so they can make sure that those interested persons get a copy of the RFP. In terms of the implementation ordinance, you may have read that the city attorney decided they want to utilize their outside counsel, or they want to utilize outside counsel to complete the drafting of the implementation ordinance, because there's been a lot of work assigned to the deputy city attorney who deals with those issues, including looking at a new ordinance called the Protect Ordinance, which will potentially limit pretext stops. And well, the initial proposal from the city attorney was to utilize our outside counsel to complete that process, but that would be inappropriate because our outside counsel is independent of the city attorney's counsel, and the implementation ordinance drafting is subject, is a function of the city council, and so the person who does that would be reporting to the city attorney's office. And so I'm not sure where the city attorney's office is in terms of selecting outside counsel to complete that task. We had originally anticipated that there would be a second draft of the implementation ordinance that goes before the PSNLN, Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee, in September. That obviously hasn't happened because there's been they're waiting to determine who's going to complete the process of drafting the implementation ordinance. In the meantime, we are proceeding with working on the standard operating procedures with regard to investigations. And we basically have mapped out those things that we think should be in the implementation ordinance, those things that are in the standard operating procedures, and then those things that would be internal policies of the commission. The standard operating procedures are higher level policies that are approved by the city council and are subject to a meet and confer. And so we appointed a committee, a subcommittee of the transition planning ad hoc committee to work on drafting proposed standard operating procedures, and we were going to have our outside counsel take the lead on that. And so that's kind of on hold until we are able to get our new outside counsel hired to assist us in that task. And incidentally, our current outside counsel is eligible to apply for the new contract. And there. And so then finally, in terms of office space update, we have been looking at, is it 750 B Street, Brandon? Yeah. Which is the Symphony Towers building. And there is a suite that the Transit Authority, is that their name?
The Tourism Authority.
Tourism Authority currently uses, and they don't need as much space as they once needed. And so they are offering us a portion of their space, essentially as a sublease, and they're working on the documents for that now. It would be an ideal location, and the price is within our within our price range. Since we are still in the process of doing the hiring, we don't really need as much space as we do now, but we're planning for our build out. And so unless there's any questions, I'll leave it at that.
Don't see any questions. So I guess we can go ahead and move on. For my chair's report, I know you guys get tired of hearing me say this, but just a reminder, everyone needs to do their hours. If you're having any struggles getting into the Better Impact system to log your hours, let Charmaine or I know, we can try to help you out on that. Again, it's really important for us to be able to put that into our annual report to let the community know how many hours commissioners are spending working on police oversight. So please make sure you do that. The other thing is, and I will send out the committee assignments, I was gonna say PowerPoint, the Excel file, so you can kind of see. Again, there's a requirement, everyone who's on the commission needs to be on at least one committee. And if you want to change from one to another, you can do that too. So I will send that out after the meeting, but we just need to make sure that everyone's on one committee that they are interested in, rules or policy or whatever. So again, I will send that out after this meeting. Last month, I gave an update. I did reach out to a bunch of different oversight groups throughout California. The idea was, I realized there was an article that basically said LA had done the exact same thing that we did here in San Diego and making recommendations on body camera usage. So rather than us all reinventing the wheel individually, I thought it would make sense for us to try to collaborate with each other. The one thing that is coming up is the San Francisco Department of Police Accountability is having they're calling it a California Civilian Oversight Agency quarterly meeting, and that's tomorrow. It's the first one, so really it's just kind of getting things set up. And then once that's kind of set up, the idea is we hopefully will be able to extend it to everyone. If anyone on the commission who wants to attend would be able to do so. So again, that's tomorrow. I'll have a report back at our next meeting on what that was about. Like I said, right now is the agenda looks like it's really just kind of setting things up and trying to establish some expectations as to what we want to do. As I was saying a little bit earlier, we had some conversations about doing a joint meeting with the Citizens Advisory Board regarding the CPE data. We did also have some conversations with the police department, the chief of police. They are working on making some changes with CEPE, and my understanding at the time was it's going to be about 30 to 45 days. So what I think we're going to try to do is still see if we can, once we get that data, if we can still host a joint meeting. We obviously have put the offer out to the police department if they choose to participate. Obviously, we'd love to have them there. I think it's an important thing to be able to get all sides together to present their data and where they think that data is coming from and what it means. And then our goal is to be able to try to come up with some solutions, at least from CAB and then also our commission. So I think what we're going to do on that, we're kind of putting a hold on that until we can find out what those revisions to the CPE report are. And again, I was told it's going to be approximately 30 to 45 days. Once we see that, we'll revisit that and see if we can get that that joint meeting set up. And with that, unless anyone has questions for me, I will kick it over to Charmaine for her executive director report.
Excellent. So my report is going to be kind of short. Sent out yesterday evening the spreadsheet for the case assignments. As of tonight's meeting, we started out with 73 cases assigned to the teams. Out of 73 active cases, we had 5 Category 1 cases and 1 Category 2 case on our closed meeting agenda earlier tonight, and closed out 5 of those cases. So now we are down to 68 active cases assigned to the teams. The Cat 2 case that we didn't get to at tonight's meeting will be carried over to our September 7th meeting. In this fiscal year that began on July 1st, the commission reviewed, deliberated, and closed out 28 Category 1 cases and audited 3 Cat 2 cases and evaluated 8 disciplines. Before I move on to the stats for each team, it is important to note that the teams are still being assigned at least 3 to 4 cases per month. So since we don't have a meeting next week, hopefully some of the teams that have at least, let's say, a larger number of cases will be able to get caught up in some of those case reviews. So the next thing is the status. The status for the team assignments are as follows. Team 1 has been assigned 13 cases, 11 are Cat 1 cases, 3 of which have sustained findings, and 2 are Cat 2 cases. Team 1 had one case on tonight's meeting agenda that was closed out. Nancy, does that sound about right?
Yes, sounds just about right.
So I'm pleased to report that the cases for this team is actually decreasing. So thank you so much, Nancy, for your work in making this happen. Team 2 was assigned 7 cases. Of the 7 cases, 5 has sustained findings, of which are on tonight's meeting agenda. The team has a cat 2 case that will be carried over into the next meeting. The team also has no officer-involved shooting in custody death cases. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Excellent. Team 3, they were assigned 5 cases. Of the five assigned cases, 4 are category 1 cases. 1 is a cat 2 case. And that cat 2 case has a sustained finding. And the team has no in custody or officer-involved shooting cases. Commissioner Workman, does that sound about correct?
That's all correct.
Excellent, thank you. Team 4 assigned 18 cases. Of the 18 cases, 13 are category 1 cases. 4 of the 18 cases are category 2 cases, and 5 cases have sustained findings. Team 4 has 1 shooting review board report to evaluate, 1 officer-involved shooting case with a sustained finding, and no in custody death cases to review. Commissioner Case?
That sounds correct. I told you to stop giving us new cases, but you haven't listened to us.
Fine. No, there's 1 coming tomorrow. So Team 5 still has 7 assigned cases. Of the 7 cases, 4 are category 1 cases and 1 is a cat 2 case. The team is working on the cat 2 case. The team has 2 officer-involved shooting cases to review and 0 in custody death cases. Team 5 also has 1 shooting review board report and 1 discipline to evaluate. Sound about correct, Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. And Team 6, so I'm gonna ask Commissioner Shea if this is correct. I know Commissioner Harrington is not here tonight. Team 6 they're assigned 20 cases. Of the 20 cases, 16 cases are category 1s. 8 cases have sustained findings. 4 of the 20 cases are category 2 cases. The team has no in custody death or officer-involved shooting cases. Team 6 has 2 disciplines to evaluate. And 1 case was on tonight's meeting agenda that was closed out. Commissioner Shea?
Yes, that's correct.
And thank you for your work as well, Commissioner Shea.
Thank you.
Team 7 signed 3 cases. 2 cases have sustained findings and 1 case is a cat 2.
One of them was done last week, so that one should be off there. And the other one, there's a category 2, but we're waiting the discipline on that one. So until we get the discipline, we can't present that one. So there's really only 1 active case, but I'll get that done next week.
Okay, let me check my records and I'll make that revision. Thank you. That concludes.
I can send you the case number that we resolved last week.
Okay.
If you need it.
That concludes my report.
All right, thanks. Now we're gonna move on over to the police department report with Executive Assistant Chief McGrath.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. So I first want to kind of talk a little bit about an event that we had over the weekend. You might have saw it on the television where we had a women's recruiting event over at Police Plaza. This is where we had several of our women that are on the department that represent SWAT, canine training, patrol, the academy, people from several detective units. They went out there and had kind of a familiarization of our department with females who came, quite frankly, from all over California and some from Southwestern United States who drove all night to get to this recruiting event. It was very, very successful. I got to give kudos to Assistant Chief Keith Lucas, as well as his backgrounds in the recruiting team, who really put all this together and got the announcement out and used several media platforms to get the word out, so that we were several people that were able to attend. But as you know, San Diego Police Department in the last couple of years have kind of rededicated ourselves to specifically trying to increase our numbers of not only women, but also minorities in our academies. And I'm very glad to say that San Diego Police Department, with its women on our department, they make up 17% of our department, whereas nationally, it's anywhere between 10 to 12%. So we're well above national average. In the last 4 academies, we have been able to increase the percentage of our diversity in our academies to where this last academy, we were at 60% of all academy recruits were diverse. So we're continuing to increase those numbers, and we'll continue to target those higher numbers as we can. So very, very proud of that. Let me just kind of go over some of the things that I've been doing over the last month. I know that on June 24th of 2021, you submitted a memo regarding some concerns that you have with officers failing to activate their body-worn cameras. So what I had done last meeting in July was to verbally tell you what we're doing, but I wanted to just kind of go back over that, because there were 5 recommendations and we have 5 answers for those recommendations. I want to give them to you tonight. So one of those recommendations was that you wanted us to perform a roll call or lineup training. And you gave us 30 days to do that. My response was that we implemented that already, and we completed it by August 6th. So we had our sergeants sit down, take a look at the actual policy, have them read the policy. And then what we also did was we implemented an instructional video where all officers were required to watch the video, and then after the video was over, to sign off, say that they viewed it. And then also there's an attestation at the end of it, which they were required to say that they understood the BWC policy. We're in the process of trying to best secure that video so we can provide it to Brandon. I know you've asked for it, and we'll get it to you as soon as we can, Brandon. The person
Chris, sorry to interrupt. Do you want me to pull up that document that I sent you earlier today that kind of goes over these so you can kind of see the responses, or is that not helpful?
I think I remember them.
Okay.
Tell me if
Go
I'm
ahead.
wrong. Yeah, so that took care of the first couple of recommendations. The third recommendation was that there was a recommendation for us to include a mandatory BWC training during our AOT, or Advanced Officer Training, and that's something that we do every 2 years. So we are going to implement that, and we appreciate that suggestion. That's going to be something that we're going to be doing. However, we have to send our curriculum to post about a year prior to those AOT trainings, and we weren't able to do that this year, but we're going to be implementing it in our next AOT cycle. So you will see BWC training in all the department regular advanced officer training. The fourth recommendation was that supervisors in our command staff will audit to make sure that there's compliance by actually taking a look at the BWC videos, rather than just confirming that their number of videos aligns with the number of enforcement contacts during a shift, which is what we're currently doing. So I did a lot of research on this, and really it just kind of stops at the Police Officers Association, in the sense that when our BWC started coming online, it was a meet and confer issue that we needed to kind of discuss with the POA. And during those discussions, it was agreed upon that no supervisors will proactively go into the system and look at BWCs for the purposes of trying to find out if officers did anything wrong. And the meet and confer with that was also with city HR, personnel, and with PD. And so we have to basically conform to the MOU and not violate the POA's agreement that they made with us on that. So, or that we made with them on that. So unfortunately, we're not able to do that. We just have to continue to do the process that we have right now, where we're just confirming the number of videos and making sure that it aligns with the number of enforcement contacts during a shift. If there is at a point where a supervisor sees that those videos and those contexts don't align, then they can bring the officer in to discuss that discrepancy in particular. And then I think the last one was that we consider some incentives for officers that consistently follow the BWC procedures. And to that, the only thing I can really say is that we don't incentivize good behavior. We expect them to follow the rules. And if they follow the rules and they do everything they're supposed to do, they stay out of trouble and they get to keep their job. So we don't incentivize officers for following policy and procedures on the department. Did that cover everything, Brandon?
Yeah, I think it did.
Pretty much, okay. And then on August 3rd, I asked in-service training staff to go ahead and review some recommendations that were brought by the commission as well. It had to do with, I think, 5 or 6 recommendations. So let me just kind of go over the first one, which was chemical agents, and that's 1.06. And what you were asking us to do was to require officers to provide a verbal warning prior to using the chemical OC spray where possible. And that would be in keeping with the use of force 1.04 requirement for officers to give verbal warnings prior to using their firearm. So we don't have a problem with that. We agree to that. And so I think what we'll do is we'll put in our procedure that when reasonable language that says that when they're going to be using chemical agents, that they should provide a warning if they can do that. So we're going to change that policy, adding that language, and we'll make sure that we get that to you so you can take a look at it and see that we've done that. As far as the other recommendations, I think we had a recommendation for the maximum restraint time limit to be no more than 2 hours. And I spoke to this last meeting, and really it's the person's behavior that's going to dictate how long they're going to be in that wrap. If it's assaultive behavior, if it's drug or alcohol induced inebriation where they become combative, that is something where we're not going to be able to take that person out of that wrap in order to be able to transport them to jail, or if they're injured to the hospital, or if they need to go to CMH. There's no way that we're going to be able to take them out of that wrap, and that may go beyond the 2 hours. So it's really just there for the safety of the person that's being detained or arrested, and then for everybody else that has to come in contact with this person. And obviously, you're talking about the medical staff in jail or at CMH, and then other officers or civilians that may come in contact with this person. The other one, I believe, was the seatbelt, and as far as the utilization of seatbelts on prisoners at all times, that policy 6.01, you want us to modify the policy to increase the requirements necessary to prior to seatbelts not being utilized under the officer safety exemption. I think there was a situation, I won't get into it, but which was kind of the preamble to this discussion. But the way that the 6.01 states is that officers who do not secure a prisoner with a seatbelt should be prepared to clearly and specifically justify their actions. So what we can do is and we agree that there's times when officers don't seatbelt these folks in the back of the police car. And what we should do is, and we agree with you that the procedures language should be changed to add basically that officers who don't secure a prisoner with a seatbelt shall articulate clearly and specifically their reasoning in a police report as to why they weren't seatbelted. And then, of course, when a person is in a wrap, there's no reason why they can't be seatbelted. And if they're not seatbelted when they're in a wrap, then they'll be in violation of 6.01. So we'll go ahead and add some language to that to make sure the officers are aware of the fact that we're going to be requiring them to document why somebody wasn't seatbelted if it's determined through the use of their BWC or through somebody else's observations or by the detainee's complaint that they weren't seatbelted. It'll be incumbent upon the officer to tell us why that person was not seatbelted. Let's see, trying to think what the other one was, juveniles in protest activities. So what we try to do is we try to make sure that we have policies and procedures that encompass what we believe to be best practices in our policies and procedures, that no matter where the officer is, whether they're at an event where they arrest a juvenile for being drunk in public, or the juvenile commits a crime, or the juvenile now is engaging criminal behavior at a First Amendment activity and they're arrested, we expect them to follow procedure 4.17, which specifically addresses, well, let me back up, 3.08, which specifically outlines the procedure when we are interviewing, when we detain or process a juvenile. So whether they're involved in 4.17, which is the specific First Amendment activity policy, and we have to arrest them, we expect them to follow 3.08, which means that they're going to be following those policies, and that they're going to be doing everything according to those policies. It doesn't matter if they're in a First Amendment activity where they're going to be arrested because they're involved in criminal activity, or whether they're inebriated at some event out in public and they're being detained for being drunk in public. So I hope you understand that it's not that we're trying to avoid putting something in the First Amendment policy. It's already there in 3.08, and they're expected to adhere to that rule anyway. Body worn cameras is the last one. It's a request to remove the exclusion from mandated body worn camera recordings in secure facilities. And I've talked to Brendan about this a couple of times. I've also talked in service training. I've talked to the chief of police about this, and we believe that right now the way that we have our BWC policy, specifically where the officer is in a secure facility, like let's say the Sally Port, we believe that the policy that we have right now doesn't create an exclusion regarding the use of BWC. So if somebody's in the Sally Port and they are writing a report, or they're talking to a detective, or they are getting additional intelligence or information, if an arrestee becomes uncooperative, or if there is some other evidentiary purpose that the officers need to resume the recording in the event mode, then they should. They should also be doing it when they're transporting prisoners. They should be doing it when they're interviewing the detainee or the arrestee. And then they should be doing it when they're searching a prisoner in those areas. But for us right now, and I know that there's some people that disagree with this, but for our operational security, we're talking about officers that are going to be having their BWCs on when they're walking around a Sally Port, when they're doing the reports. There's opportunities for that BWC footage to start compromising our operational security, where it's showing our entrances and exits to the facility. It's going to show placement of specialized equipment that we have in our Sally Port. It's going to be showing and listening to our planning and tactics, which are sometimes discussed in these areas by other officers that are around the transporting officers or the arresting officers. And it's going to be showing other detectives. It's going to be showing civilians. It's going to be showing criminal informants, a lot of people that walk through those areas that will eventually be on our BWCs. So we think that the benefits in implementing the recommendation really don't seem to outweigh the risks of seeing all of those things that we would not want to be seen. However, it does, in our policies, it does say in 4 things: during interviews, prisoner transports, when searching a prisoner, and if they become uncooperative and we have to go to the car to open it up to deal with the detainee or arrestee, the BWCs do come on. Although it doesn't capture all the information, it does capture the video without the audio portion of it. And I get your concerns. I've spoken to the chief about that, and we all agree that at this time we're not going to change that policy. So with that, I think that's everything.
And the chief and I know we're probably gonna have some comments on that. The chief and I have already had some conversations about the BWC issue. I mean, obviously, my personal opinion is I think the department should err on the side of recording things rather than not, especially because, you know, and again, we had a conversation earlier today, existing law would allow, if there's a BWC that needs to be released to the public, existing law would allow them to either bleep out or blur out things that would be confidential, or concerns, or, you know, identities of people that are not involved in an enforcement action. When they release videos now, they do that today. So if you see a random bystander in a BWC, they get blurred out. So I personally don't feel that concern is the biggest issue there. But I think this is going to be an area where we're going to have to agree to disagree. I push pretty strongly, and they're pretty steadfast in their beliefs as well. So Nancy, I see you have your hand up. I'll let you go ahead.
Chief, I had one specific question about the BWC in Sallyport, and that has to do with the sergeants that work for the watch commander. And when a detainee or an arrestee comes in and asks to speak to a sergeant, they go out and speak to them. We've had several cases when having those sergeants use their BWC would have been really helpful. And that was the one particular instance that I was personally worried about and hoping that you guys would do something, because the sergeants that are in the watch commander office say they don't even wear their BWC, and we think that is something that should be corrected. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's okay. Now, you know what? So Nancy, what I'll do is I will take that, I will write that down as a note, and I'll take it to the chief, and then I'll also talk to Anthony Dupree in Internal Affairs, and we'll bring that forward and we'll have a discussion about it. So you feel that when the detainee has a complaint, you would like the supervisor to go out there from the watch commander's office, who generally takes those complaints, and have a BWC on and activated when they're taking that complaint?
Yes, and they do get called out several times a day, I'm told. To sometimes they don't take a formal complaint, but they're contacted when an arrestee says, I want to talk to a sergeant, or I want to talk to a supervisor. They go out and do that, but they don't have body worn camera with them.
Okay. All right, very good. Yep.
All right, thank you.
You got it.
Anyone else have questions or comments? Okay, thanks, Chief. Appreciate it.
And Brandon, I just want to say thank you very much for all the conversation on this too. I know it's been a month and we've been going back and forth, but I really do appreciate the conversations that you and I have had. And I think that it's, you know, it's a great thing that we're able to have those conversations and disagree, and still come back to the table and have further conversations about all of the stuff that we think is just as important to you. It's important to us as well. So thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Doug, I see your hand up.
Yeah, did the chief address item number 6 on the list there, which was observation of detainees in the Sallyport?
Yes.
Yeah, so we have a draft version of their official response, and the chief can probably kind of elaborate on it more, but their point is the fact that the current policy already says that detainees have to be observed at all times. And so they basically felt that the existing policy is already more strict than our recommendation of every 15 minutes. So that I think was in a nutshell what their response was. And Chief, if you want to elaborate on that, feel free.
Sure. So yeah, Brandon's right. So the discussion we had about that was if we say that we believe that they should be out and monitored every 15 minutes, that we don't think that's acceptable. We believe the prisoner needs to be continuously monitored for their well-being at all times, and it's up to the officer to say that they're doing that. And you know, and we have to make sure that they understand that that's their responsibility. The welfare of that detainee or arrestee, whatever you want to call the person, once they're under the care of that officer, it is their responsibility. To say that they don't have to be, looked after, you know, until every 15 minutes goes by, there's a likelihood that the officer is going to have to go down and do impounds, may have to go into the watch commander's office to get booking approved, may have to go upstairs to talk to a detective. If that officer feels that if every 15 minutes, that's the only time that they have to go in and check on our detainee, there's a lot of things that can happen in 15 minutes. That's why we require our officers, before they leave that detention area, they are assigning another officer to watch that detainee for them continuously. That makes sense.
Thank you.
You got it.
All right, thanks, Chief. And then Commissioner Ride-alongs, I know a couple of us have already started to do those. I want to remind everyone, if you haven't done one, definitely put in a request. I think it's important especially for our new commissioners, to try to do it. I always recommend doing the division where you live first. So for example, I did my first one at Mid-City because I live in North Park. I think typically you know that area better than some of the other areas of the city, and I think it's a good first experience. There's also opportunities for us to do sit-alongs with dispatch and the call takers. It's 4 hours, 2 hours each. Again, I was impressed just by how well they do their job, because they were like, do you understand what's going on? And I was like, no, I actually really don't. So those are all opportunities for all of us. I encourage everyone to take advantage of them. And does anyone have a ride-along that they went on that they want to give a report on? Okay, not seeing any. If anyone does, feel free. And then I'll just open up to commissioner announcements or comments, if anyone has any. All right, well, thanks for I would say faster meeting, but we're actually 7 minutes over. So with that, we will adjourn. Thanks, everybody.